Okay, can you hear me? Yeah, good. So I'm Benoit, I'm a community liaison for the Wikimedia Foundation, and I will introduce you the extension Translate. So yeah, I'm going to give you, it will be a short class, but as on all classes, you will have a short test at the end. So let's start. Bonjour. Yeah, like multiple people in our movement, I not only speak one language. And yeah, many people only speak one language, and luckily we have translators that will make the bridge between everyone. So the extension Translate allow people to translate pages. That's not the same thing as content translation. You may have heard about content translation. The extension Translate is for dynamic pages that are updated often, like policies pages, help pages, documentation, things like that. So, first of all, a practical example for translators, how to translate. Yeah, the process is really easy. I will show it to you. It will work well, depending on the language, of course, and most of the time, depending on the quality of the source. Because in most cases, if you don't have a good source, yeah, you will not make a good translation. That's the same thing if you want to build a house. If you don't have good bricks, your house will not be well built. So, to access the translation, if you go to a page, you will see at the top of the page some, a banner with all the languages and a link to translate the page. You will have here a list of all languages in which that page is available. If your language is not there, you can click on Translate this page and you will have access to the translation, a translation interface. So that interface is really simple. You have all different kind of messages you can find. So untranslated will require your effort. Outdated are messages that are already translated but that need some new effort. You also have the unreviewed one for a collaborative effort, and be sure that at least 2 people have reviewed the message for quality. You can switch to any language. You will have a research system that will allow you to find your favorite language. And then when you have chosen the language you prefer, you will be able to translate. So on the left you will have the source, and for instance you have here a source for a title, you have a source here for a big paragraph, and on the right you will put your translation. You just have to click on the elements you want to translate and you will arrive to the translation page. There you will find the source again at the top, and here you can input your text. You can have some suggestions there, depending on the language. And when done, you just need to save. That's basic wiki page system. So you translate, you click to next, and you translate all the page that way. You, of course, are not alone. You are helped by the tool. Each message will have a documentation here at the top, for instance, and you can have some suggestions. For instance, here I'm trying to translate in Spanish, and I have some suggestions based here on Apertium, which is a system that provides translations. So that's a way to be helped. You can have also messages there that are similar, because you often translate the same title, you often translate the same thing. So those elements are here really to help you. And when you translate, you may see some extension variables. Sorry. So those variables are created by Translate extension, and they help you to translate. So here you have an example of a small paragraph to translate. Here you have the source. You have to work there, and inside of that paragraph you can see some strange things, starting with the $sign. So to highlight them a bit, you will see 2 different things. First, the variable in blue, and also some wiki text markup. So for people who are used to translate a page to to work on the wikis, wiki text is not a blocker. If you are not used to it, yeah, that's not that complicated to use, especially in translation when people pay attention to when they are creating pages. So in our case, we have here a sentence in italic, and here we have a link with a translation variable. Oops. We will go back after in a more practical way. Yeah, we'll explore that later. Okay, so who can work on translations? Like on all the wiki, we have roles, and everyone with the authorization of doing something can do something different. So we have 3 roles that are editors, translation admins, and translators. All the 3 of us have different workflows. The first one is for editors. Basically, you want to change a page and you want that page to be translated. So first you edit the page, you add the content, I will explain it to you later, and your changes, when you will save the page, will not be immediately available for translation. A translation admin have to review the edit in order to say, yeah, that's good. That's done to avoid some vandalism. For instance, you have someone, editing the source page, and yeah, anyone can translate that page, so you will have vandalism reproduced in good faith by other people. That would be damageable. So that's why there's that system. So editors you can freely edit a page, a wiki page, like any wiki page, but you will have to rely on someone to validate what you want to do. Those people are translation admins, and their goal is to check the quality of the page. So they will look at the diff, look how things have been done. Potentially they can make some small changes based on experience or based on best practices that are shared across the wikis. Then they click in order to mark the page for translations. And all edits are live. Anyone can now translate the page that has been updated. And the third role is basically translators. There's a page to translate. Okay, that's easy. You translate it like I've just shown to you before. And thank you. Okay, let's go deeper. How to edit a page? Yeah, like I've said, it's a wiki, so you edit the page. You make some changes. Actually, you have to use wiki text when you edit a page. Because the visual editor is not ready yet to welcome translations and translate tags. Yes, because translation require extra markup. We are going to add some new elements inside of the translations. We have seen that a bit in our previous example, but let's go deeper. Yeah, here is a typical page marked for translations. Don't be afraid, that's not a big deal. I will show you the different examples, so let's focus on it. Okay, first you will see the translation units. So you can notice them on the previous page. Here, look, you have small numbers that start with T, and they are HTML comments. So those translation units will be used in order to match the source of the page and the translation, all the translations. The principle is the following. When you open the page, you will have the source of the translation, like we've seen before. Here you put your text, and here at the top you have the link where that translation unit is stored. And here you have translation unit number 2, which matches the translation units in the source. Okay, going deeper on how translation namespace works and things like that. It's not the goal of that presentation. But if you have any question, you can go on wiki or ask me if you have more questions. Very important. Translation units are created by software, so don't change them, don't remove them, unless if you perfectly know what you are doing. For instance, if you add a new paragraph between translation unit 4 and translation unit 5, you don't need to rename translation unit 5 to have translation unit 6 and so on. Otherwise you will basically break quite all translations. So yeah, that's a golden rule. Follow that rule and you will have no surprise in the source. Translation units have a particular case. It's for titles. Look, here you have the T3 is after the title. Double equal means title in Wiki markup. They are always after for parsing reasons. That's the only particular case you will see concerning translation units. Number 2, you have the variables. So we have already seen the variable before in the translation interface. So here you have, in blue, a variable. So what is the goal of a variable? First, you open a variable and then you close it. And the goal of those variables is to have blocks of text that will be stored as small containers. So in that translation unit named 18, you will find the number here. You will see that here the variable named talk is there. So for people who are familiar with Wikitext, here starting with the 2 brackets is supposed to be a link, and that link is there. It's going to a talk page. Using this allow translators not to worry about the page they want to target. The talk page will be the same on all translations. Translators just need to use that $talk element, and the link will be built. The goal is to avoid mistakes. For instance, if someone, I don't know why, decided to translate talk Wikilove's French translation in another language, the link will not work. In order to find pages that have a particular language, we are going to add the special column my language inside of a link and, of course, inside of a translation variable. That way, it will redirect automatically people to their language if their language is available for translation. So, yeah, usually on the wikis, French is the setup for my interface. That's my main language. And Visual Editor is not the same. In French, Visual Editor is not the same thing as if I translate Visual Editor, it will not be translated same way. So if I create a link here, for instance, without that special my language special page, then people will not go to the translated page. If I'm using English for my interface, Visual Editor will go to Visual Editor page. If I'm using another language, due to the use of special column my language, I will go to my fallback page, here French. So that way people can go to a page they can understand. Okay. A third element, an important one, are the translate tags. Translate tags allow you to know where to start the translation and when to end it. So when you have a text, for instance, here you have a text with 25 translation units, the software will know that the translation system must be set up starting there and finishing there. In between, everything you will put will be a separate element for translation. So if you have 24 paragraphs, every paragraph will become a translation unit with an independent identifier. So if I put translate at the beginning, translate at the end, then in between, every paragraph will become, if I have 25 paragraphs, I will have 25 translation units. Okay, so that was the basic concerning how to understand how to edit a page. We are going deeper with an example. So here I'm going to edit that quick text. I only have 2 paragraphs on a title. I'm going to add this event will happen in November at the end of the last block. First case, I'm just adding that at the end. That's all. What will then happen? The edit is going to modify translation unit 4 because I've added a new sentence inside of the paragraph. So when the translation admin will mark the page for translation, that paragraph will be marked as obsolete for readers. And translators will have to update it. They will have just, to take the original text and add the new translation for the last sentence in green. Let's take another example. We have that paragraph and then we have one blank line and we add our new text. What will happen in that case number 2? That's easy. Like I've said, every new paragraph will be considered as a new translation unit. So in translation unit 4 will not be updated. The new thing in green will not be available for translation until it's marked for translation. And when it will be marked for translation, it will be considered as not translated. So translator will have to translate a new element. Here I've marked my page for translation and the new translation unit has been added. It's the 28th. Case number 3. Well, that case is a bit tricky. So, you have your 3 units and you have put your element below, and it will not be marked for translation because it has been added as a translate tag. Readers will only see it in English, and translator will not be allowed to update the page and update the translation. So be careful when you edit a page. I've already seen those cases. People put their text after the translate. The closing translate tag, and unfortunately the page was not set up for translation. Okay, variables. I was mentioning variables earlier. So let's say that my total page is not the same as before. It's obsolete, so let's edit it. We have a new total page. Well, that's really easy. You just need to edit what is between the beginning of the variable and the end of the variable. You just replace the link. And what will happen? For translators, nothing will happen because on their translation they will only see $talk. So they will never see what is the target of the page. In that case, a translation admin will decide if the unit needs to be updated or not. In any case, that change, when the page will be marked for translation, that change will appear on, it will be on all pages. So people will just click on the page, on the link, and they will be redirected to the new page. Variables, sometimes you will see some variables, multiple variables in the same sentence. And in that case, I really advise to have unique variables on here. And have explicit variables, of course, because I've already seen people adding tvar pipe variable 1 here. For translators, that's a bit, it can be problematic for translators, because they don't know where that link is supposed to go or what that variable means. So, my advice is to have something clear and also to have unique names for the whole page, because you can have the same variable name for different paragraphs. That's possible, but at some point, if you merge the paragraph, you will have to redefine the labels. If you split translation and merge translation, which is a bit complicated, but doable. You may have some bad surprises. So my advice is to have unique names for a given page, and don't use special characters. I've scratched my head during something like 10 hours in order to understand why my page wasn't markable for translation. It happened. Okay. We don't only have text on pages, and sometimes you need to work on structure, and you need to work on images. So let's go for those cases. Well, actually, sometimes you need to update the page, but no translation are needed. For instance, here I have a list of cities, and if I want to add a new city to my list, if that city has a pretty international name, yeah, we don't need to update it. So we are going to isolate the list of names between a closing translate tag and a new opening translate tag. And if I add a new city, randomly Barcelona, well, when the page will be marked for translation, the list of cities will be automatically updated on all pages, all translation available, and it will have no impact on translators' work.
But sometimes city names need to be translated.
Indeed, sometimes names need to be translated, but I'm in a case where it doesn't need to be translated. For the example, okay. If that name needs to be translated, I would have add that name, below the translate tag, so people can.
Maybe Barcelona for French, right? Barcelona.
Yeah, of course, but yeah, in that case, I've randomly decided to take the name officially spoken in the language of the country. So I'm good with that. Yeah, if I would have added, I don't know, a city in China, I would have added Chinese tags. Yeah, I'm good with that. That's a theoretical example. Yeah. Okay. The goal there is just to show you it's possible to make some updates without asking more effort from translators. Translators are all volunteers, and we thank them for all the work they do, but we don't need to, ask them for things that don't need real changes. We can also have a way to isolate templates. So in that case, I want to isolate the onshore template so that translators will not accidentally change the target of my onshore. That can be a bit that can be confusing. If this or the whole template is translated, it will not work. So yeah, I will come back to that case later because it's interesting. I just want to show you it's possible to isolate templates. It's also possible to isolate some lists. So for instance, here I have a list of things. So I want it to be a list forever. So I don't want, for instance, to have someone who will, translate that, all the bullet points. Because someone may want to make a paragraph because that would be better, but that was not the purpose at the beginning. So here we are going to create translation unit for every point that is in the bullet list. So Wi-Fi, okay, may not be translated, okay, we can debate about that, but that's not the point. But for instance, you have more important information that require translation, and it may be interesting to isolate those elements. Okay, case of images. Okay, here's the wiki syntax in order to introduce to add an image to a page. Yeah, we can just put the image on, and that's fine. Okay, that's English. I translate it to French, so I'm going to translate everything. So I'm going to add fichier Institut France Japon, and yeah, you can be sure of one thing. That image doesn't exist on Wikimedia Commons, so the image will never be displayed. So it's really risky. So I really advise you to avoid people changing the image, just in case. So how to do that? First, you identify what you have. Sorry, jet lag. No, I'm kidding. You have to identify what you need to be translated. So in this case, you have the whole image with a size, an alignment, and the explication of what's that image. Then you only take what needs to be translated. So here it's only the caption. You need to translate the caption. So you have translate tags so that only what is between the orange tags will be translated. And then you wrap it up in order to put it inside of the page. Here you have an opening translate, so you put a close translate before, and here you have a closing, so you put a new opening in order to have all the elements translated. So that the only thing that will be translated will be the caption. It seems to be a bit tricky, but yeah, when you get used to it, that's fine. Okay, let's come back to answers, though that was my previous example. Here I have a list of cities, and somewhere in my text I want to have a link going directly to that section. Well, what happens if I translate the title? Here, the new title, here in French, will not be the same one. So we don't want to have unit 26 to be a link. We want to have it translated, but it will not be possible to create a link there. So we are going to use the ensure that will go to list. And then we are going to make that link directly to this inside of the link when we need it. So this element, if I want to go to the list, this element, if I click on the link that will be created by that, will go direct to there, that ensure, instead of going to that hypothetical title that is not translated or may not be translated well. Of course, that list is not exhaustive. There's plenty of other examples, so you can read the documentation that has been created and is available on MediaWiki. A new important part after the technical part. Let's discuss a bit about how to ease translation for successful collaboration. And there's some best practices to have. Yeah, the first one will be to actually use the tool and do translations. The better you know the tool, the easier it will be for you to use it, and the easier it will be for you to understand how people use it. So, sometimes you only speak one language. It happens, of course. That's not the problem. There is another way to learn how to use the tool. I will show you later. That's obvious. Keep things short. Try to avoid to have massive blocks of text. So, if you have a big block of text, you can have multiple translation units instead of one big, so that it would be easier for people to translate them. Don't forget to use international English. I see sometimes some people with a North American background or British background who create pages, and sometimes they don't manage to understand those pages just because of those differences between languages. People add some cultural references that are, it's like that very famous American TV show from the 70s. Yep. No, I don't know it. Some people use jargon, that's our new project that will use the break XYZ. Yep. What is it? I advise you to have a glossary somewhere, so that people will not be lost. Also avoid metaphors, Yeah, my project is like a new butterfly flying inside of a sun. Maybe perceived that, it's not that direct and people may not understand the point you want to make. Most people we are working with have on Babel boxes English 2 level. That's not much. Most people attending the hackathon, for example, have English 2, English 3 and below level. On above, actually. Sometimes it can be, there's some tools existing that may help you to work on that. The Hemingway app, for instance, is a good way to know if your text will be understandable by different people. Okay, don't forget that, please. Keep the titles. Sometimes you can tell yourself, hey, I have that title, so I'm going to put here before a /translate and after a new translate tag, so that I'm going to isolate the titles. I advise to keep the titles because titles are breaks. It means I can take a break when I'm translating. And I can come back later. It will be easier to, resume my work. Document. It's really important. That's also a way for people who only speak one language to practice that tool. If when you are on the translation page, to tap. If you type QQQ in language search, you will have access to documentation. That documentation can be necessary sometimes. For instance, if you put a link to a Wikipedia article, you can, tell people, yeah, please adapt that link to your an article in your language. That's a way to do that. You have seen documentation in previous examples, and so, yeah, don't forget that. It's really, really important to have things documented. It eases a lot translation work, and people can know how to make better translations. Here's an example of how documentation is displayed. It's just on top of the page. You will see that on, every time you have some documentation there. Okay. Final section, how to create a new page. Basically, that's really simple. You know how to. I've explained you how to make it happening. So you can first create the page. You can use VE in that case. Then you use Wikitext to add translate tags. You add the different variables you need. I advise you to ask for advice for more experienced users. It can be translation admins. They can help you to set up the page best way and explain you, better tips than all new theory I'm showing you. And yeah, then that's done. You can ask for translator for translations and get translations done. Last touch. That's the cherry on the cake. Don't forget to add that important element on top of the page. Languages / it will display the bar where you can switch between languages. That's all from my side, so I'm going to let you work with some tests. So let's go for test number 1. Case number 1, why this edit will not work? Niklas, you're not supposed to reply. Yeah, Niklas here has created that tool, so he knows the case. Okay, yeah.
Okay, I think it's because the D3 is placed before the title instead of after.
Here, okay, D3 before the title and?
Same thing.
Same thing, okay. Niklas?
I would guess the same.
You guess the same, okay.
I noticed that the true translation variables have the same name down there.
Yes, absolutely. It will not work because of 2 causes. You managed to find them. Congratulations. The first one is indeed that one with the translation title element. And here on that paragraph for translation unit 4, you have 2 variables with the same name. The correct version is that one. You put the translate. You have the translate unit, the translate unit tag after the title, and you have link 1 and link 2. Okay, those 2 links, those 2 variables may have been improved, but that's a theoretical case. Case 2. How many new translation units will be created in that example?
I guess counting the titles, it would be 6.
Also 6.
Okay, 6 and 6. And?
I would say none because I don't see the translate tags.
Aha!
I assume they're somewhere around the example.
None. Yeah, translate tags were missing. Okay, let's then assume that we have translate tags wrapping the example. So, how many translation unit will be created? You said 6.
Yeah.
Still 6? Once? Twice?
And we assume that the translate extension is installed and everything.
Yeah, of course. Everything is installed, it's ready, it will be translated. Yeah.
I said 3.
You said 3, okay, and that's 3 because you don't have any blank line between the title and the paragraph. So all that block will be considered at only 1 translation unit. That block has the second one. So yeah, the correct way to make that. This is better. You will have 1 unit for the title, then 1 for the paragraph. 1 for the title, 1 for the paragraph. You can make a song based on that. That's all. Thank you very much for attending. And if you have any questions, you can go online on the wikis and you can also ask me right now.
Well, yeah, I have a question.
Yeah?
Precisely now I was editing, I was trying to translate a text. a couple hours ago. Can you have twice the same, same text, I mean twice or more than twice, with the same number of unit?
No, it will be a separated element, but the translation memory will identify the fact that it's the same one, and will suggest you, give you as a suggestion the same text. So you just have to click on the suggestion, and the text will automatically be, it will be used automatically. Not, it will be used at least.
Oh, so the question is, I mean, the answer is that the tool will say no, but if the editor may change it so that you can have the same unit twice or more times, right?
Let's go with an example. Here you have your translation. You can add something, and if you have somewhere else the same sentence, you will have there the translation. So here it's with French because I'm using a different language, but here you have a percentage saying it matches at 60% or 100%. So if you have already used that element elsewhere in the translation, and the page has already been marked for translation, you will just have to click here, and it will be used for you. Yeah?
Okay, I understand.
I hope I've been clear. I hope I've been clear and replied to your question.
Yeah, I understood. And then, well, I'd like to know the way to become a translation
admin?
Yeah.
Okay. You go to the wiki where you are active on. There is, in theory, a page where you can request to have your right changed. So I don't have the precise page in mind, but I can tell you. If that's on MediaWiki, it's the same request page to have all other rights. Same thing on Meta I think, concerning other website using that system. I don't know.
I'm in Meta right now. I was just helping an Italian user who was setting up a contest.
Okay.
An edition contest, and I was translating it into Spanish. But then I found out that there are a couple of things that don't go very well.
Okay, yeah, we can see that later.
Like there's one translation unit that is a bunch of code. I mean, it's like one table, but the translation unit doesn't cover the whole table.
Okay,
that's only one translation unit, but
yeah,
I really like to change it. Of course.
Okay, that's an interesting case. We can see that. Maybe right now, if we don't have any other questions. No. Okay. Thank you very much.